Hello, everyone.
Hi, Emily.
So I was wondering, I was sitting in a meeting and nobody was there, so I think that I'm on the wrong one. So
It said you were in another meeting.
I guess I was. I was like, nobody's there. I should probably get off. Okay, so let me set this up. It'll take me just a second here. Okay. Sorry for the slight delay. So how is everybody while I'm setting up the recording?
Good, good.
Nice.
Not bad. Good.
Very good. Hello, Lisa, David, Britta's on. We just heard Joy and Angelica. Okay, here we go.
Hi.
Now I'm going live here.
Go, and I'm unmuting myself now, so
Okay,
it
perfect.
works.
Okay. Okay, so now let me share my screen here and then we'll jump and get started. Bing. Okay. Can everybody see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. And let me put you guys over here. Okay. Okay. Here we go. So welcome everyone. This is our fourth lecture. So I'm so glad to see so many faces are repeating. It means that you're getting something valuable from this, which I really love. And hopefully you're building some of your foundational concepts so that you can start to apply the basics of Ayurveda to your life in general beyond these different topics. So we'll just jump in and get started because we're 5 minutes behind and we want to stick to schedule. So the first slide here, which we've seen a few different times, is the structure for our lecture. So today we'll have some interactive polling like we did the last 2 times. That seemed to work nicely and be a way that folks could engage because online platforms are a little strange in that way. And then we'll do 30-minute lecture. During that time, it'll be a 30-minute lecture and 15-minute Q&A. So as always, if you have something that comes up that you feel like is clarifying something on a slide, please just chime in. I might not see the chat box, so you're welcome to unmute yourself and just talk if something's not clear. And we'll be going over foundational concepts, a sleep discussion, and then some recommendations. And if you do have questions, feel free to write them down if you want to save them for the end, and then we'll kind of have this active discussion at the end. So what I wanted to do first is just to review. So some of you have actually been in our lectures multiple times. So this is going to be a review, but it never hurts because it's such a big concept in Ayurveda. But what we wanted to do is talk a little bit about the doshas, and we're going to go a little deeper today. So it's important that we have this foundational concept. So as we've talked a few times, doshas make up the world outside and the world inside of us, right? They're made up, as you can see at the top, of the Pancha Mahabhutas, the 5 great elements. These are air and space that make up Vāta dosha, and you can see the qualities of Vāta below. We have Pitta dosha that's made up of fire and water, and then water and earth makes up Kapha. And we've talked about this a few times related to our constitution and the variety of body types we see, right? Like people can have a constitution that's dominantly Kapha or dominantly Vata Kapha. So this is kind of how an Ayurvedic doctor or practitioner or consultant would be looking at kind of your base constitution. But we've also talked in previous lectures about the doshas related to season. If you remember back, or if you were at our seasonal allergies conversation, we talked about Kapha dosha specifically related to spring. So if you remember back, we had Vāta dosha, which was related to before the spring, so winter and fall, right? That kind of, you can see the qualities here: dry, light, cold, rough. That's our fall season, right? Things are drying up, leaves are on the ground, it's cold. And then Pitta, which is associated with our summers. Now, obviously, there are variations of this. If you were in India, they have 6 seasons in India. So it depends on where you are geographically, but most of you are on the East Coast of US. So these are about your seasonal routines. So this is where we're going to go a little deeper. So this concept of dosha exists in a lot of different forms in Ayurveda. So it's not just this thing that can be easily applied. It's very multifaceted. And so we're going to go into dosha as related to stage of life as we begin to construct our concept of sleep, right? And this will relate in the future, and it builds towards that. So you can see here a graph. So in India and in general in Ayurveda and many different Indian Vedic sciences, they think about life as having many transition phases. Sometimes they're considered 4 phases. In Ayurveda, there's specifically 3. And these 3 are Bala, childhood, Madhya, middle age, and Vridha, old age. And so it's not really stated in the classics what ages these exactly are, meaning like, oh, is it until 17 and then you transition? So it's important to have a little bit of a fluid concept. But for today, you can think about it either as childhood up to puberty, right? Or you can think about childhood as a stage. If you're thinking in Western medicine, the brain, they say all of the structures are completely developed by the time you're 24. So, I mean, that's a little bit of a range, but you're still getting that basic principle that like this is the beginning of life, right? Madhya, which is middle age, would span from after the period you've chosen, so 16 or 24, until about, for women, until menopause, or you can think about until retirement age for most people, right? And then Vridha, older age, would be post-menopause or post-retirement. And these are important concepts to have because actually the doshas map onto them. So when we look at the first line, Kapha, which is made of water and earth, you can see that in childhood, actually, Kapha is very present, right? And we think about this because the body needs to be built. The body's not going to be built off air, right? We're not like ethereal beings. So we need to build our bodies with earth. So there's a strong correlation to childhood and the earth element, and specifically Kapha. In Madhya, you can see that shifts. Earth goes down a little. There's no need to build now, right? We've built our structure. And now we're moving into Pitta, which is more fiery. And so the idea is that you've learned and you've built all this kind of solid foundation. And now you need to progress and use it, right? And Pitta is this transformative element, right? If you think about the relationship, Pitta would be transformative, Vāta would be more about transportation. So you can think in the Vāta stage, when we go to this Vridha, the older stage, there's a transition towards the end of life and then towards an afterlife, right? Or whatever you believe. So it's this kind of like transient, ungrounded, maybe more spiritual aspect, right? In later years, definitely kind of this air and space element. And if you think about what we're doing in Madhya and Vridha, just to explain a little further, Madhya, we would be using our knowledge to progress in a career. We'd be using our progression in the career to build a house, right? So we're doing all these things that are transforming our life, maybe having kids. In Vridha, we would be leaving those things, right? That's kind of in our past. We'd still be enjoying them, but we're preparing for something else. So ultimately, life is about learning, Bala, in childhood, progressing, Madhya, and then letting go in Vridha. That would be the concept, I think, all over India, pretty much. And it's not connected to, though you could connect it to many spiritual traditions. It's just a cultural aspect. It's not necessarily a Hindu or a Sikh or a Jain thing. This is how they think about life and the transition phases. So one thing I wanted to do here actually was a poll. I thought it would be nice to, let me get it up here. So this is going to require a little bit of thinking. So we're transitioning now to, okay, we've heard a little bit about dosha. We've heard about dosha and seasons. We've heard about dosha and stages of life. What are we thinking about dosha and sleep, right? Like, how does this all make sense? So what I want you to do when I launch this poll is you're going to be thinking about typical characteristics of sleep. This is the typical, not like, once off, of childhood, middle age, and old age. What would you just say are stereotypes of sleep? So I'll launch this poll and I'll give you about, I don't know, a minute. I'll let you know when most people's answers are in. Everybody's doing a lot of thinking on this one. Only one person's response is submitted. So it does require a little bit of looking back to the chart, thinking about the elements. What do you know about those elements and the gunas, right? The qualities of kapha, the qualities of childhood. 2 people now. So if you can't submit, there's 2 people who seem to not be able to submit. You might need to change your settings in the preferences to accept polls. Sometimes that means coming back into the meeting. So you can choose to do that or not, but you can fill around with the preferences. So we have about 4 minutes. So maybe the last few of you can submit because we're about 1 minute and 40 seconds. And then I'm going to end the poll in about 2 to 3 seconds. So even if you're not done, submit. Okay, ending the poll. And I'm going to share it out with you. Okay. So here's the shared poll. Now, just to let you know, you can move me around on the video. You can also move the shared polled results. So if you can't see something on the next slide, feel free to just grab it and drag it or, minimize me. So what I'm going to do here, now that we've taken our guesses, we're going to see description of sleep, and we're going to see what we got right. So let me actually downsize a little bit of this mirror. Okay. So here we are. So for kapha, which we said was associated with childhood, most folks said heavy. Good. That was one of the gunas of kapha, right? So we've kind of been remembering from either the previous slides or past lectures. Going to bed before 10. Good. Some folks got that. I didn't tell you could pick actually multiple answers. And then waking before after sunrise. So those would be the 3 that would be associated with kapha. And we can think about it like usually kids sleep pretty soundly. Maybe not a baby, but kids in toddlerhood and beyond. And they usually sleep pretty long, right? Comparatively to maybe what we would think of in older stages of life. So the second one, here we go. Most people said, yep, at least a few people said light. So Pitta would be a lighter style sleep, but not as light as maybe Vāta and not as heavy as Kapha, right? It's kind of this middle area of sleep. And then we have bed after 10 p.m. So a few people said after 10 p.m. So the reasoning for that is that Pitta, so if you think about the fire energy loves to solve problems. So it's this kind of really directed, targeted energy that's transforming things, right? And you think about middle stage of life, like you have a lot of responsibilities that you have to tend to and then resolve issues. So it often ends up being that if you have a high pitta, you might be solving problems up till 10 p.m. So you might push it, right? It's this kind of like, oh, I'm still working. I'm still like trying to get this stuff done. So that can be the reason for going to bed so late. Waking at sunrise in the middle stage of life, or with pitta, there's this tendency to get up around then. Might be because of kids or work, but if you relate it to time of life, but that's also one. And then hard to fall asleep, again, because that directed energy, right? Like we're still working. In Vāta, So we have lighter sleep, right? This is the lightest sleep because it's ungrounded, it's air. And interrupted. So this can be sleep that's you're consistently waking up. Could be because of fear or anxiety or worry, right? These are all kind of Vāta tendencies. There's too much movement in the mind. Additionally, it could be if you're thinking later stage in life, it could be you have to go to the bathroom a lot, right? Like, I mean, there's a lot of reasons people are getting up, but it would be this interrupted pattern of sleep, which most people listed here. Or at least some people did. And then the next one, wake before sunrise. So if you think about older people especially, they're waking up pretty early. And it could be because they can't sleep longer, right? It's just like their energy's too ungrounded. So I'm gonna stop sharing the poll. We've done some stereotypes of like what these different descriptors of sleep would be. So I feel like we've done some nice categorization that can lead us to the next slide. So questions that may arise to you. Those were the stereotypes, but I just put one up. I'm in my later years and I sleep great. Why? So we're not always going to fit into the category that we put here, right? Like, oh, well, what the heck? I'm in my Vata stage. Shouldn't I be having all these Vata things? Well, in Ayurveda, it all depends, right? Everything is personalized in Ayurveda because we have a lot of different things that influence us in our lives, right? And in the West, we'd call that epigenetics, right? Like I think they say about 80 to 90% of diseases or things that, make imbalance in our lives are actually not from our genetics, right? Not from our base constitution, but what we put into our mind and body throughout our life. So some things that influence sleep, right? It's not just the stage of life or season of life you're in. There are many different things that can influence sleep. So one is your prakriti, so your base constitution. So this would be the unique balance of doshas that existed for you when you were born, right? That's what makes us all so diverse. We're not all just Kapha, Vāta, Pitta, 33%, 33%, 33%. It's not how it goes. So your base constitution could mean that you have really strong Kapha and you sleep well and it's never been an issue for you. And that's great. But if your base constitution is Vata, maybe you've experienced more disturbances throughout life because it's a little bit more airy. Here we have Vikriti. This is another thing that could be a reason why your sleep doesn't fit with your stage in life. So Vikriti is an imbalance. So I actually picked out from Charka Samhita, which is one of the classic texts. I chose a shloka that I was going to share with you that really describes how Charka and how Ayurvedists think about imbalance. So it says, Kala buddhi indriya arthanam yogo mitya na kati cha. Dvaya shrayanam vyadhinam trividho hetu samgraha. And what that means to translate is that there are three main reasons that cause imbalance. And I'm going to put them up. The first one is parinama. This is inappropriate use of time. So this could be as easy as you're kind of like eating at midnight, right? Like you're doing things that don't go with the Ayurvedic clock. It could be something that's actually suggested about the seasons of life. So like if you're, for example, treating your body like you did when you're 16 and you're 60, that could create a little bit of an imbalance, right? I mean, in digestion, definitely. I mean, who's eating like they were when they were 16? All these things could fall under that category, parinama. Pranya parada is misuse of mental factors. So this is the idea of how often do we know we shouldn't do something, but we do it anyways. So we're like, I'm really full, but there's that pie in the fridge. That's for me tonight. So that's the kind of thing where it's probably not healthy for you. You don't need it at that point. It's not a craving you need to go towards because it's fulfilling some kind of need. It's just you kind of overruled your intellect and did something a little indulgent, which is fine once in a while, but how often you do that can create imbalance. And asatma indriya artha samyoga is the misuse of the sense organs. So this one we're actually going to talk about related to sleep, although all of them could be related to sleep, because a nice example is if you're using your phone right before bedtime, that's misusing the sense organs of the eyes, right? I mean, the eyes are super engaged, you're flipping through really fast, right? that's not the time of night you want to be engaged in really fast activities through that sense organ. So it's considered one of these causes of Vikriti. And the last thing that just of these few that I've listed that can influence sleep is the season of the year. So for example, if you have a strong Pitta constitution and it's summertime, maybe you experience it's too hot for you to sleep and you keep waking up because you're uncomfortable, right? So that would be an example of it can influence sleep because like it's Pitta season, your Pitta Prakriti and Pitta constitution, and additionally Pitta stage of life, right? It's just too much Pitta, so you just can't sleep. So what I wanted you to do is think a little bit now that you've heard about the types of sleep and what may be influencing you, what type of sleep are you prone to? So this is another poll. So let me get that up. Poll, and hopefully those who couldn't access the poll before can access it now. If not, you can always type your answer personally to me in the chat box if you'd like. So this one should be a quick one. I'm not going to give you a minute or minute and a half for this. And we'll give another 5 or so seconds for folks to figure out. And I see somebody in the chat too. Perfect. Oh, and both people can submit now. Great. Okay, so I'm going to end the poll. And it looks like, so for here, when we're sharing, most folks are saying maybe they have some Pitta sleep issues, or they just, they're prone to moderate amount of sleep. That's actually a good thing. But they do have maybe some trouble falling asleep or late to bed. Only one Vāta, and a few who are a little bit more Kapha sleep issues. So let's see here, stop sharing. So we have some oversleepers in the audience. So I will say, I can adjust a little. Most of my recommendations were for Vāta Pitta sleep disorder or sleep problems like insomnia and things. That tends to be, at least in my clinical practice and in general, what most people cite, like this worry or anxiety, or they wake up, or all these different things. So I'm going to give you some recommendations around that. I wasn't going to talk about Kapha sleep challenges, the oversleeping. But if that is something, I can give a few tips at the end if we have time for how we can adjust for that. But I did have a survey that I sent out to most folks, and I'll resend it. And if people would like to hear a lecture on Kapha sleep challenges, then I can also do that. It just ends up being for half an hour, a little bit much to cover all the different sleep challenges. But you're welcome to ask them at the end too. So that's how we can get to it. We can cut into some Q&A time. So for Vāta Pitta sleep supports, one practice that I would recommend would be foot oiling. Now I'm going to go into a lot of different practices, so you can pick and choose which one you think will be best for you and which one you'd ideally like. But the idea here is you'd use Sleep Easy oil. That's a Banyan Botanicals product. You could also pick another type of oil, but that's a very nice product for sleeping. And you can see that oiling the feet would have these qualities we've listed on the side, right? Remember we said in many lectures, we said the opposites balance. So these are some of the opposite qualities of Vāta and Pitta, right? Heavy, slow, dense, soft, and static. And that's what we're trying to bring into our life. So even if you don't want a foot oil, if you can think of things that would bring this heavy, slow, static, and you're experiencing a lot of this ungrounded energy at night, then these would be things you'd want to integrate. So what you do is you take the Sleep Easy oil, you would either massage yourself, your feet, maybe for 3 to 5 minutes. And I would warm the oil first. Maybe you can hook in a partner or a spouse into massaging your feet for you. You can say, look, the Ayurveda lecture said this is supposed to be good for me and I need this. That's what always, I'll share a little, that's what always happens to Harmeet. The Ayurvedic doctors always tell him, or tell me all these wonderful recommendations that he can help me with. And I'm like, yes, I need massage every day. So you can go home and take this with you. So what I do is the foot oiling, and then I make a nice foot bath in a bucket, right? Or like, something from Amazon I got that is like fits my feet. And put some warm water. You could put some Epsom salts or some essential oils in it. That's really nice. Some soothing essential oils. And then you can soak there for like 10 minutes. I would do this about 1 hour before bedtime. maybe when you're reading or something. If you're more prone to Pitta, right, Pitta type sleep, then, or it's summertime, I would say that what you could do instead is do your foot oiling an hour before, put on some socks, avoid the heated water because you don't want to exacerbate heat at night if you're having hot sweats or night sweats or something. And what I would do is right before bed, put my feet in cold water, right? So then you're kind of starting off the night really cooled. That's my best recommendation. This is a fine practice for either Vata or Pitta. For Kapha, the thing is it's too heavy, right? I will say just each one I'll comment for Kapha, but Kapha would want to be a little more invigorated and go to bed a little, not so densely, because remember, opposites balance. So here we have Vata and Pitta sleep supports the second one, which is routine. So Vata thrives on routine. Now, Vata energy, this kind of like ungrounded energy, loves to have a variety of things going on in the day, loves to be talking fast, moving fast, doing everything fast, just really ramped up. If you've ever met somebody who like talks a mile a minute or like, jumps from one thought to another, that would be like, that's a lot of Vata. So in order to ground that energy, you really need to establish routines, which some people can be really adamant about not wanting because they like that energy, right? But it can be provoking this lack of sleep. So the best recommendation here is bed by 10, like no exceptions. You're in bed by 10 and you're waking at 6. This is 8 hours of sleep, so it's completely enough for most people, unless you had some type of specific condition that you needed more or less. Can't think of a condition where you'd need less necessarily, but more. But I would definitely recommend that. The second thing I would recommend is having meals at normal times. So a lot of us have meals whenever we want, like at random. It's really best for Vata to have meals at a set time. It sets that circadian rhythm we talked about in our first lecture on stress. So that's a really positive for Vata. This recommendation is ashwagandha milk before bed. So this was something Lynn went over. So there's a recipe I linked here to our blog. So you can definitely look that up. That's really nice because, so milk, the best, if you could get raw milk that you pasteurized, that would be ideal. Second case scenario would be if you could get pasteurized milk, but that was unhomogenized. Third case scenario is organic milk, right? In Ayurveda, the key tenets or the traditional text suggests that every single thing you do to a product changes it, right? And we can think about this, how does that relate? If you think about a tomato, if you eat a raw tomato, it's very different than a cooked tomato, right? The taste is different. So the idea is not only is the taste different, the way we process it is different, right? Everything is, our bodies are subtle, just like the environment. You put like one pollutant in the environment and it changes everything. The bees all die, it's like everything influences everything else. So the idea is the less processed milk you could get, Ayurveda would suggest, would be the best to use and would have the most heavy grounding qualities. Now there are different things you'd have to research about raw milk and processing it if you were going to do that, but we won't get into that here. Ashwagandha is a mild sedative. So this would be nice for those who can't sleep because it pacifies that kind of energy. And I would also say reduce stimulants during the day. So coffee, alcohol, those things would obviously aggravate Vata, right? It creates movement, not pacifies it. The fourth thing is a weighted blanket. So this can be nice if you look at the qualities that we're using to balance: heavy, slow, dense, soft, static. Weighted blanket does that, right? Like that's heavy. So if you need that kind of pressure on you or that weight to feel grounded, that would be a good recommendation for you. They also make the Zonely weighted blanket, comes in fabrics that are also more breathable. So if you tend to be a hot sleeper, you could get their summer version, right? And you can look into that. We have, I think their summer version, it might be made out of hemp or something. And I know there's other people on actually the chat who I've seen that also have weighted blankets. So if you had questions at the end, we can chat about it. But that can be a nice option. And using your senses correctly. So this is where we get back to that slide where we talked about sense care and how it can lead to some imbalances. So the idea here is that Vata loves to have all this kind of input to the senses and a lot of stimulation. So in order to correct for that or to dampen that energy, we can do a lot of different things. And I would say some of these things actually could apply overall to everybody. It doesn't matter if it's Kapha, Pitta, or Vāta, but some might be a little more oriented to pacifying Vāta, because Kapha and Vāta are seen as opposite ends of the spectrum, right? Kapha is dense and grounded and maybe like a heavier energy, whereas Vata is this ungrounded energy, right? Like completely undense. It's like kale compared to a potato. It's like the complete opposite ends of the spectrum. So the idea would be is to integrate into your sense routine or your daily routine. Some mindful eating would be nice. And what I mean by that is maybe eating silently, like we're trying to put food in and have things go down. And if you're talking the whole time and going up, it doesn't make a ton of sense. It doesn't mean you have to do that every meal, but you could think of one meal where you could be a little bit more quiet. Taking breaks throughout the day from your work, setting a timer to take a break, maybe to look out a window, right? Reset, ground the energy, because the energy might be just going, going, going. The senses are going, 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 right? Always looking at your computer, always scanning, always focused, which is Pitta, right? Go outside. You could, there's a million things you could do. Take a bath, get a massage. You'd have to figure out which ones would work for you, which ones you enjoy, because you don't want to create some mental stress in doing these things. And if it's a Pitta sleep disturbance, maybe taking bath's not the one you pick, like that's not for you. Maybe you're more into going outside, stargazing, meditating, doing yoga. There's a million things that can help you to bring it down a notch during the day. And those days where you're kind of getting out of control, calm it down. So I have another, do I have a minute or two? Since we started a minute or two late, I'm going to take another minute just to say a few things, because I know a few folks said they had some Kapha sleep challenges. I just want to say that, and then I'll get to polling you for a final time before Q&A. So for Kapha, if you're sleeping pretty long, right, and great if you're going to bed, let's say by 10, that's great. If you're going to bed a lot earlier and you feel like you're sleeping really into the Kapha time of day, we'll go back a few slides so you can see what time of day that is. The idea would be to move your sleep patterns, right? So Kapha time of day is 6 to 10 a.m., 6 to 10 p.m. So the idea would be is try to get out of the Kapha time of day to go to bed, and try to not enter into the Kapha time of day to wake up. So again, you're at that 10, but maybe 10:15 until 6 sleep pattern. But the idea would be is maybe some exercise at night, light exercise like walking or something. Additionally, in the morning, doing some invigorating breath work, which if we did another lecture or we had a little bit more time, could teach you a little bit of breath work that would really kind of get you going in the morning. Additionally, some different yoga routines in the morning, these kind of things. And there are a lot of other practices that can invigorate, but what you'd want to think about is how do I invigorate my day enough where I can and commit to a sleep pattern that doesn't, because if you start waking up during the Kapha time of day, like 7, 8 a.m., you just keep hitting that snooze, right? It's like the energy is different after sunrise, right? The day moves on and it becomes a heavier energy. And so you really need to adjust that, would be the key concern. And thinking about how you can kind of invigorate your day. So I won't go on too much longer. I'm going to poll you all. Let's see here. So sleep struggles, the last question, which is if you were going to commit to doing one of these things and you had a sleep challenge, which one do you think for your constitutional challenge that you might have had, what would be best? Would it be foot oiling, regular sleep schedule? So I did mention that's good for Kapha too. So if that was you, if you were the Kapha person who felt like, man, I wanted them to talk more about Kapha. Ashwagandha milk before bed, probably not for Kapha, right? You don't need more grounding. A weighted blanket, again, more Vata Pitta. Better use of sense organs, good for everybody. So we have about 5 folks who submitted, about halfway there. Yeah, keep those submissions coming in, and I'm going to end the poll. Okay, end poll. So my hope is that folks can start to work on these things, right? This isn't like a consultation where I can, really follow up with you all the time or hear about your personal challenges with sleep and give you some more targeted things that you can implement. But we have some things here. So my thinking is what if you could commit to these for 7 days or 10 days? Like one thing, could you do it? And would you see an improvement with it, right? Even a sleep schedule, like that's a big hard one, right? For most people, especially if you're on the Kapha end, 6 a.m. seems unattainable, right? So could you move it up half an hour? Like maybe you're not at the 6 a.m., but you're saying, well, I've been waking up at 8. I'm going to wake up at 7:30 and I'm just going to get out of bed every time. And it's going to be hard until you kind of get it earlier and earlier. But could you start doing that? So I would encourage those things. And again, we can focus a little more on Kapha in maybe a future lecture. So for now, Q&A time, because we're at 7:38, so I did kind of rush a few slides. So I wonder if people had any questions that came up around sleep or something that wasn't covered, or kind of a topic that they wanted to know a little bit more about. And you'll have to unmute yourself unless you're going to write it in the chat. And I'm opening my chat now. And we had a comment from Britta, who uses the weighted blanket. And she said, it's not hemp, it's bamboo. I couldn't remember what it was. And she said, that's amazing for hot sleepers. So she has the same blanket. I knew she did, but I didn't know if she wanted me to reveal that. So any questions?
Emily, Emily, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yes, yes. How do you feel about taking melatonin at night to set the sleep pattern, especially for older people? I read a lot about, I know it's maybe not an Ayurvedic thing, but does that come up somewhere?
It does. So the way Ayurveda looks at supplements or any kind of like, that's not necessarily a prescription drug, but like, any kind of thing like that, is they really frown upon things that are in isolation. So ideally in Ayurveda, most things that you would do would be part of a diet, an herbal supplement, or a lifestyle change. And when I say herbal supplement, a lot of times they're talking about teas, right? Or things that go through the digestive system and then be absorbed. So they really don't, there's not very minimal and kind of a negative outlook on things like, and I'm not going to say melatonin, but for example, a good example that I can give is curcumin. Everybody's obsessed with curcumin now, right? Like they're taking curcumin supplements, like we got to get anti-inflammatory, like everything's inflamed. Ayurveda would be like, no. You just need to take turmeric, or, that turmeric, which is the same, but you need to take it in a lower dose in your food, or you need to have some kind of thing in your beverage. Like you need to start integrating in small doses so your body can process it.
Like the golden milk, yeah.
Like the golden milk. So melatonin, the idea would be is like, could you induce melatonin through darkening your room, through putting down shades? Could you do things? And obviously, if something was a severe thing and you had to move towards something like melatonin, it would just be out of the Ayurvedic scope. It wouldn't be something.
Right, like during travel. I like using it when I cross time zones, just to kind of set myself up to, I sleep very well. And I actually one of those Kapha people that wakes up early. I don't have an issue with sleeping in, but I sleep like a baby, as you have noticed probably. I sleep well and I wake up when the sun comes up, when the birds start singing. So, yeah.
So the thing is too, is many of you might have put Kapha and you're like, actually I sleep soundly and it's not a problem. Like that's not a problem then.
No.
You're actually like a baby and it's good. So it's more those like when you're if you're having lethargy or something. But yeah, that would be the melatonin responses. Like if you tried all these other things, like would it still, and there's other recommendations too, which are around if you need to sleep more, there's a whole diet based on like how you would be eating would be adjusted before they would look to that.
So yeah. I just have read so much about, as you get older, that the body makes less melatonin. And then, with the virus going around, they really feel that you need to make sure you have quality deep sleep, which I do, I think. But, so that's why the question came up. And I have used it, like I said, when I travel, I like using it because it keeps me, sleeping when it gets dark and getting up when it gets light. So, yeah. And I just used like 1 milligram, very, very small amount.
Thanks for the question.
You're welcome.
David, did you have a question? I know we have a few chat questions.
Yeah, if you don't mind. So I know you talked about the weighted blanket. Do you have any recommendation on, I always seem to struggle with a pillow, and I've done one pillow, two pillow, different types of pillows. I don't know if that was, to kind of get more restful sleep. Is there any recommendation around that at all?
I guess that would be it would really go into two, like there's great pillows for side sleepers, pillows for back sleepers. Like I don't really I don't know what your sleep pattern is or if you're moving
Right.
around a lot. So I don't have a recommendation for that actually, for like what type of pillow would be best. I'm sorry.
No,
Um, I know what what I use, but I think like it's probably because I usually sleep on my stomach, so that one is nice for me.
right.
But there are definitely some other recommendations for like if you're not falling asleep or something.
Mm-hmm.
Not for much longer are you sleeping on your stomach.
Well, I'm not right now, but so I've gotten a special pillow, but that's not the pillow I'm going to recommend to David.
Good point.
So there was a few. Oh, David, do you have another question? I'm sorry.
Real quick, I'm sorry. So you know how you say 10 p.m. to 6 a.m.?
Yeah.
Can you cheat that in either direction? The only reason I say that is because, and I work where your husband works.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm working at 10 p.m. at night. I'm not sleeping till after that. And I can adjust my schedule sometimes and not have to start work earlier in the morning, right? Or a normal work schedule. So I know and if you can't answer now, it's fine because I have other questions. But, can you cheat with it? Because I just have those situations where there's no way I'm going to bed at 10.
So that's a hard one. So it's interesting because I've talked a lot to my colleagues about people who work overnight. Like, what is that? Like obviously they're not going to be waking up at 6 if they're working like 11 to 6 or what, this kind of schedule. In Ayurveda, they would just say that unfortunately is unhealthy for the long run. Like it's not a good pattern because it doesn't go with nature. And Ayurveda is all about going with nature. So it's difficult. It's not an easy answer. But I will say that if you are more prone to like a kapha type sleep, or in general, I think the main thing I could say is that they would say to wake up still at the same time and then go to bed earlier the next night, right? Like, because the idea is you don't want to be sleeping well into the morning because then you just have this like drag the next day. So it's really hard though to convince yourself of that. There's this whole mental challenge to say like, well, I'm going to cheat. I mean, cheating by half an hour, fine. But if you're cheating like 6 to 8, that's very different. You're in the middle of kapha now. So the idea would be is there any way with this pitta nature work where you need to be like just solving problems at 10 p.m. Is there any way that like, I think no, because I know you're doing installs and all these kind of things. So it's just that's going to be a challenge. That's one of the things when we talk about imbalances, that's one of the things, everybody has imbalances. That's one of the things that might imbalance you. And that's not a really nice answer to say, but it's like, we're all dealing with different things like that. Right. But I would say to kind of make it still consistent, which is hard.
Okay. Thank you.
So there's a few questions. Is everybody, if you have to leave, I'm very sorry that we got started a few minutes late. I'm going to take these few other questions. Maybe we can stay on until 7:50, 7:51. Would that be okay with everybody? If you have to peace out to it, I understand. So I just don't want to miss everybody's lovely questions. So would you say drinking the Tulsi tea is just as good as drinking the milk for sleep? Also, what company for weighted blanket do you recommend? So I think the company we said for weighted blanket, which is on the PowerPoint, is Zonely, Zon. I'll type it in the chat, Zonli. So if you can't, everyone in the meeting, Zonely, you can look that up on Amazon. I think it's about $35. So drinking the milk would be more pacifying for sleep. So these are general recommendations. So for example, would I give milk to everyone who had a sleep disturbance? No. If somebody had, like, let's say too much kapha, like too much weight, I wouldn't recommend drinking milk before bed, right? Because they're having a sleep disturbance, but then they have a kapha more like body, and they have so many things going on because we're all dynamic. But if I was just to zone in and say, like, what would be best for a sleep support in an ideal circumstance, it would be ashwagandha milk, because that both of those, milk and the ashwagandha, are pacifying to Vāta. Tulsi tea is fine, and Tulsi tea is a nervine, but Tulsi tea is made with water, and water is dry. It's actually considered dry in Ayurveda, and it's not grounded because it's not as heavy as milk. I'm not saying it's ungrounded actually, but it's just not as heavy. What are your thoughts on alcohol use? For sleep, I would stay away from it. In general, I stay away from it, but especially if you're having this kind of Vāta disturbance or a Pitta disturbance. Actually, caffeine and alcohol disturb all the doshas. So it's really not considered something healthy. Now, if you were going to say to me, well, I just have it like once a month, then I'd say, like, don't create the mental stress over deleting your once a month beverage. I mean, like, they say, there's a doctor named Dr. Rosie who's one of my mentors, and she says, she's like, don't do all this crazy stuff and then create a bunch of mental ama, which is like mental, like stuck energy or like disease, because like you're trying to do 1,000 things and do them perfect. But the idea would be, Ayurveda would recommend alcohols only as medicines, right? They did make medicines, and they still do, with a base of alcohol, but otherwise they wouldn't recommend them. Any recommendations if you wake up in the middle of the night to getting back to snoozing? So pranayama. So there are great breathwork techniques. One's called Chandra Vedana. I can't teach it to you right now, but you could look it up. That's a great one for getting back to sleep. It activates the moon energy in the body. Additionally, if you were up for a while and you were like, I'm not sleeping, I would get up and do a little bit of meditation, or if you had some guided meditation or yoga nidra, like any of those things. And then the hope would be is eventually you could go back to sleep, but just laying there sometimes doesn't work for people. So Lee.
Emily?
Yep.
Hi. What was the breathwork practice for Kapha that you mentioned? What's it called so I can look it up?
So a good breath work for Kapha would be definitely long, if you're doing it in the morning, a long exhale. And what it would be is you could do, I didn't mention one actually, but you could do maybe Shitali, like, and either with Brahmari it's called, I'll type it in the thing, Shitali with Brahmari, I hope I'm spelling that right, or with alternate nostril breathing.
Emily, why don't you send them a video later?
Okay, that's a good idea. So why don't I follow up with a video of that, and I'll actually do the one for, I'll send both. I'll send the Vāta video, and then after the Vāta excerpt, it'll be in the same video, I'll send the Kapha. And so you can kind of figure out which one's best for you, and then you can guide yourself, and once you no longer need me, you can shut me off.
Thank you.
Any last things? We said 7:51, so we have 1 minute. And I know Steve typed in, he said, degrees of comfort from Amazon due to arrive Thursday. That's the brand he just bought. So it seems like you're all sharing and creating nice community. Okay, so we're on 1 minute now. And the Q&A is done. Last things here, next Tuesday's lecture, boost your home medicine cabinet. So if you're a gardener, or if you just want to, get some herbs in from great sources and start to have things on hand that you could use for sleep or headaches or really a lot of different things, join us next week. We will be talking a little bit about if you're going to plant them, what ones would be planted indoors, what could be planted outdoors, what would you have to harvest in the fall or bring inside. And then we're going to launch probably, and we want your thoughts on an 8-hour Ayurveda Foundations Part 1. So this would be a once a week, probably on Thursdays from 7 to 8, time for us to go deeper on the foundational concepts so you guys could start to apply them more broadly. The one-offs are great because you get to learn about these fun topics, but it's all based off my knowledge, which I would be sharing with you, but it's not enough to build the structural supports you'd need to think more broadly about issues as they come up in your life. So we're considering doing the 1 hour a week, and we're hopeful that we can, we've requested a good friend of mine who's a primitive Ayurvedist doctor in India to actually Skype in for 2 of those sessions. So she would be the guest lecturer. So we're still figuring out timing for her because it's actually her morning at 4:30 a.m. So we are going to confirm that soon, but just wanted to put that out there. and see if folks were interested. And yeah, you don't have to let me know now, but well, you'll keep hearing about it. So just mull it over. It'd be starting probably in June on Thursdays. So if you have any, if you want to reach out, or if you don't like that day or something, just message me. But otherwise, I will let you go. And I again apologize for my late start and being on my meeting alone. I'm glad I switched over because I was like, there's nobody here. And I really thank everybody for taking the time to attend all these and to join us. So well wishes in the following week, and maybe I'll see you all next week.
Thank you, Emily. It was great.
Take care, everyone. Oops.
Bye.
Bye. There we go. Bye.